Hi, everyone, and welcome to our first Haunted Hearsay. I'm Caroline Sweeney, and I'm here with Ben Murphy. Well, when I say I'm here with Ben Murphy, he's in Dublin. Say hi, Ben.
Hi, everybody.
We're doing
Thanks
this
for
through
coming.
Skype. This is just a wee introduction into what we're going to be doing. It's going to be basically, and this is a word that people in Donegal will know better, going to Garniel, but online. And that's basically going visiting, storytelling. That's how I remember. I don't know if that's the direct translation, but I know that's what it meant. You went, if you were going to Garnier, you were going visiting, and that's what they used to do. They'd sit and knit and tell stories. I loved it as a child. So that's basically what we're going to be doing, but covering anything to do with spirit world, paranormal, supernatural, you name it, we'll talk about it. You name it, we have an opinion on it. We're not experts, but we have an opinion on most things. And for our very first episode, we're just going to cover a few different things. It'll just be chats between myself and Ben. Hopefully, we've got other friends that are prepared to join in with us if we can grab hold of them after this lockdown, or maybe we can just do it by Skype. But tonight and for Halloween, we're just basically going to be covering sound and the history of sound.
Well, I live in Dublin, and Caroline's on the other side of the country. So we decided to put this together just as a way of us continuing our ghost stories and chats that we normally have in the background. We just decided to make a channel and share it with everyone. So we thought Halloween is the best opportunity to start since the subject matter is about the paranormal. And also, we thought it was a great opportunity, considering that it's a lockdown and everyone is spending a lot more time online, that um, it's a great place to share our stories and to find out
It
new
is.
stories.
And
Uh,
we've got lots to share. Like Ben's not really promoting himself enough there. Ben is also a part-time filmmaker in his normal life
a film,
and has made several films that have won lots of awards. They're only short films, and there's one to do with the Banshees, there's one to do with the fairies, and we are going to debut that for Halloween as well. We can't leave that out. It was shown at the Pompeii Film Festival. So,
so the
yeah.
film we're going to show is directed by a close friend of ours, Anthony Robinson, and produced by a fellow Donegal woman, Aoife Kelly, and then myself. And it's about 10 years old at this point, but it's
I
been
don't, I was researcher.
and
Yeah,
Caroline
one of
screened,
the researchers.
yeah, and yeah, so we screened in Pompeii at the UNESCO site where the volcanic eruption happened.
I've never been. That's definitely on my bucket list though.
Me too. And actually, we can talk about this another time,
Oh
but
my God. No. By the way, anyone listening, we do get easily sidetracked.
very
We
easily.
could end up on whatever subject we start on. It might not be the subject we'll finish on,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
that's, you can tune in and out if you want.
Go with the flow, as they say. So yeah, we're part of this project, I suppose. The Haunted Hearsay is also we wanted to share stories that other people have come up with and stories that they know, and we can also with things like the Banshee. There's often a difference in the stories. That's really interesting to hear what one person's heard about the
Yeah, they
Banshee.
do. They differ from county to county as well.
Totally changed.
Yeah.
So, and when we were making our films, we did a lot of research and we went around and we sort of had to find a common denominator. So yeah, we're going to show the Luna, which is sort of a cross between a dance. It's a fairy dance. It's the story of the fairy circle. If anybody knows about that, and hopefully we can actually get Anthony on sometime to talk about the film maybe afterwards.
And he has a lot more experience in spooky going-ons and ghostly hauntings. So we
Yeah.
definitely have to get Anthony on. I'd like to say what we're going to do now is go and get ready for Halloween shenanigans. We've introduced it. We're going to come back, tell you a bit about sound, maybe throw in a ghost story. I think our dear Ben here has one. And we're going to show you the short film about the fairies. And it's going to be a fabulous Halloween. Happy sound. Back in a minute, folks. And we're back. We're back again. Happy Halloween, happy sound to everyone listening to us. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Caroline. Happy Halloween to you.
Happy Halloween to you too. It's a bit of a mad one here. We have quite a bad storm, and the electricity's only after coming back on. It was off for an hour there. Typical. I dropped a Buddha this morning. I seem to be having one of those days, one of those once in a blue moon kind of days.
For the blue moon, exactly. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So we're going to start Haunted Hearsay today with a little background about Samhain, Halloween. Just to give anyone listening, I mean, Samhain was the month leading up to Halloween. And it was known by the Gauls and the Celtics as it was the end of the summer, the beginning of winter. The way they marked the end of spring, the beginning of summer with Beltane, they marked the end of the summer, beginning of winter with Samhain. And leading up to Samhain, I've read quite a few different things about it in the past, but the basic gist of it is children were sacrificed to the gods of winter for appeasement, so that they wouldn't be treated so badly. They wouldn't, whatever, for whatever reason.
Crops wouldn't fail.
Yeah, exactly. Well, not that they would have had crops in the wintertime, but it was just, I really genuinely, I mean, I've read lots of different things, but none of it makes, obviously, sacrifice a child, and there is no thing to it. But initially, it was the chieftain's child, the chieftain of a certain area, his child. If that he had a child born that year, it was his child that was offered up because it meant it was more important.
Yeah.
Then when the Fomors were fighting with sort of the Numidians, it was the Numidians' children, and not one or two, but a quarter of all children born that year were given in sacrifice. Not that the Numidians were doing it on, sort of allowing them to do it. It was done forcibly.
Yeah.
Now, we know that the Numidians it was Nemed and his people. He had a tribe of about 2,000. And I do know from various other books that I've read that they were based along the northwest coast. Now, there's no concrete information, but it does say that the Fomors built a tower in Tory Island,
Ah.
that the Numidians and the Fomors fought against each other. And now, I mean, the Numidians were successful in fighting the Fomors, but then their chieftain Nemeth, he died in 2000, I think, or not 2000, maybe it was 2000, of his tribe died from some sort of influenza.
Oh, really?
Isn't that weird, considering the COVID thing we're going through now? And that sort of decimated his tribe and made them easier for the Fomors to take over, and they were treated badly. I don't know why Donegal always seems to be the place up on its own, but maybe there's something to it. But the horrible thing basically was that it started off with a few children being sacrificed, they were taken coming up to Samhain, and then sacrificed then on Halloween, which was All Hallows Eve, which is today. And they, thank God now, when St. Patrick came in, that sort of, all those things were stopped. What the introduction of Christianity into the island got rid of a lot of the old pagan ways. Now, the Celts they didn't bring Halloween here because they were already celebrating Samhain and Halloween here, but the Celts had a similar tradition, so that when they came here, they married both traditions.
Yeah.
The Gauls apparently had a similar tradition. I'm sure there's lots of different tribes across Europe that had similar traditions as well. But there was predominantly, all sort of people going back then, all pre-Christianity, had a plethora of gods. You had a god for this, you had a god for that, you had a god for good weather, and the people that were here in Ireland were no different. The gods of summer and spring, the Celtic goddesses, were much more affable than the winter gods.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to analyze it now. That's for another time, maybe. But it was a very sad and scary time for anyone that had a child, because nobody was safe. They were picked, as I believe, randomly. And so when the introduction of Christianity to Ireland and getting rid of a lot of the Druids. Now, it wasn't a Druid tradition. The Druids were employed by the people to carry out these things, to carry out these sacrifices, but it wasn't actually a Druid tradition, if you know what I mean. Because I was surprised, I thought it's something to do with Druidism, but it was no, they were more brought in to carry out these rites because of, I suppose, their background as well. But with the introduction of Christianity, the sacrifice of children at Samhain stopped. Now, people still wanted to mark the, I mean, it's a lot of people were very superstitious that, oh, well, what's going to happen to us if we're not sacrificing children now at Samhain? But so they still had to mark it in some way. I know you have something now coming up where it was an old tradition that was revived that you went to. But I think there's also, I love the fact that they've adopted it now as opposed to sort of sacrificing people you remember. For a long time, we were remembering the children that passed. Now it's basically something where we remember everyone that's passed. This is a time when the veil's thinnest, according to folklore and tradition, between the worlds. And this is the time to celebrate our dead and say hello to them and, appease them, as it were. I don't think they really need appeasing. That was a very primeval attitude to things like. But yeah, so I mean, Samhain and Halloween isn't the happy occasion, wasn't the happy occasion that it is now. It was still, there's a lot of darkness to it even now, but I remember even growing up here, we'd done a thing called Mummers, where groups of us would go out and we'd do a play or we'd do a song or the same thing, suppose now, as trick or treat. In America, that's sort of when it sort of, the Irish took that tradition to America and then sort of they monopolized it and they changed it. And to be honest, for the better, from what I can see, they made it a fun celebration. Became about children, celebrating children as opposed to sacrificing children. And but I don't think they took the mummers with them. That was part of the tradition here, where
Yeah.
groups of you would go round. But it was the same thing. You knocked on the door, and it was the mummers, and you were dressed, you had your face blackened or whatever. But truthfully, we had black plastic bags over us and a plastic mask. That was probably the height of our costumes in those days.
Oh, the same when I was a child, it was plastic bags.
I mean, now it's like you go into every shop and there's something available that you can dress up in. But I mean that's relatively new for here. But yeah, it was. It's nice to see that it's come round to this that we're celebrating something that's fun for children now, as opposed to. But we still should remember the thousands and thousands of children that were sacrificed in the name of Samhain on Ireland's soil.
Yeah.
And from what I can gather, and the more I read, it's up here it happened mostly. I don't know what they had against the people up here, but it seems to have been a lot of them up here. But that's so as I say, that's the background to Samhain and Halloween. As I say, it's not as nice and as fun as you would like to think it is, but it is now. So I think it is a nice time where we remember people now and sort of celebrate their passings as opposed to being sad about it. I think we have also today. We're going to show. I know that you've got your wee.
I'll tell you a little bit about that.
Yeah,
So,
please.
so basically, every year, not this year, I imagine, but every other year for the last 20 odd years, um, there's been a reenactment of a fire procession. So now this is Celtic, but it's
And where do they hold this?
so this happens in a place, hard to pronounce place called Clachta, and it's spelled with a TL, Tlachtga. It's in County Meath near Newgrange. I think it's 12. I read it was 12 miles from Newgrange, which is a very well-known site. But basically, the tradition there and the tradition that's still going is that they used to, at the end of the year on this night, they would extinguish their fires in all their households. Everybody would put their fire out. And back then, you'd light your fire for the next day off the embers from the last night, if you know.
Yeah.
So your fire never really went out, and that's a symbolism of warmth and shelter and the rest. And you cook all your food on the fire back then. So the symbology of everybody extinguishing their fire is a very profound idea back then. So Basically, the idea is that a big communal fire was lit at the top of this sacred site at the top of this hill called the Hill of Clachta. It's near Tara, if you ever hear of the Hill of Tara, but it's
Yes. Yeah.
the same general area, but not the
The High Kings came from, where all the big chieftains were based back in the day.
exactly. And so what everyone would do would they would march in procession up to the fire, a communal fire that was lit on that night, a big bonfire, and they'd light their torches, and then everybody would walk with a flaming torch back to their own houses and light their fire again for the new year, or for the
Right.
new for the winter. You know, the new. Um, so I suppose it was a way of coming together as a community on some level. It was a way of sort of. It's not so symbolic as what you were talking about in child sacrifice, but it might be one of the ways that the Celts celebrated, as opposed to an older tradition like you were.
Yeah, the Fomors or the Numidians or the
Exactly.
gods even.
But so essentially it's a Celtic fire festival. So we went. I've been a few times now, where
You have a clip you can show us, haven't
I
you?
yeah. So I was going to show basically, um, there's a witch at a well, and there's a bit of chanting and singing. So the clip I'm going to show you is before we actually went. Oh no, it's when we get to the top of the hill. Um, there's a song that everybody sings, um, and it's sort of a pagan song. So that's what we're going to play. I have a quick 30-second clip
And this would be celebrated on Halloween.
on Halloween. Yeah.
Okay, then looking forward
So,
to seeing it.
so it's coming right up.
Thank you.
I'll just
Wow, that is very impressive. Could you tell me a wee bit more about what we were actually seeing there?
so everybody came together in a big group, and we were kind of led on this procession all the way up the hill, and at the top of the hill, um, we did this chant, and it's a chant for the goddess, um, that they were celebrating at the time. To be honest, I don't know exactly.
There seems to have been quite a lot of gods and goddesses. I know that the god of winter was Crumcree. He seems to have been the one that had to make the sacrifices to. I know the goddesses tend to get a bad rap.
Goddess of fire, but yeah. So I suppose we should get into some of our stories now.
Yeah, actually, well, I know that yourself and Colin have a couple of stories, so I'm very interested to hear now what you have to say about you have a ghost story for us?
Well, I know I have a story about a cursed Egyptian mummy hand that
Please, I'm all ears.
that we pre-recorded, so it's coming right up.
The Mummy's Hand, Roger Bohr and Nigel Blundell. Count Louis Hammond was framed as an occultist and psychic healer. He was often given exotic presents by grateful clients he had cured. But the oddest gift of all brought him nothing but trouble. On a visit to Luxor, Egypt, in 1890, Hammond cured a prominent sheikh of malaria. The sheikh insisted that the healer accept a gruesome gift, the mummified right hand of a long-dead Egyptian princess. Count Hammond's wife disliked the dry, shriveled hand, from the very first. But her dislike turned into horror and revulsion as she heard the story behind it. In the 17th and last year of his reign, King Akhenaten of Egypt, the father-in-law of Tutankhamun, quarrelled over religious matters with his daughter, and the king's vengeance was ghastly. In 1357 BC, he had the girl murdered by his priests. Afterwards, they cut off her hand and buried it secretly in the Valley of the Kings. The people of Egypt were appalled, for the girl would be barred from paradise because her body was not intact at burial. Hammond would have turned the relic over to a museum, but could not find a curator willing to accept it. He locked it away in an empty safe in the wall of his London home. In October 1922, he and his wife reopened the safe and stood back in horror. The murdered girl's hand had changed. Shriveled and mummified for 3,200 years, it had now begun to soften with new flesh. The Countess screamed that it must be destroyed. Although he had never been afraid of the unknown, Hammond agreed with her. He insisted on only one thing, that the hand of the princess must have the best funeral they could give it. They were ready on the night of October 31st, 1922, Halloween. In a letter to his lifelong friend, the archaeologist Lord Carnarvon, Hammond wrote that he laid the hand gently in the fireplace and read aloud a passage from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. As he closed the book, there was a blast of thunder that rocked the house into total darkness. The door flew open with a sudden wind. Hammond and his wife fell to the floor and lay there in the sudden glacial cold. Lifting their eyes, they saw the figure of a woman. In Hammond's account, she wore the royal apparel of ancient Egypt, with the serpent of the house of pharaohs glittering in her tall headdress. The woman's right arm ended in a raw stump. The apparition bent over the fire, and then it was gone, as suddenly as it had appeared. The severed hand had vanished with it, and it was never seen again. 4 days later, Hammond read that the Carnarvon expedition had discovered Tutankhamun's tomb, and that they would enter it in spite of the ancient warning emblazoned at the threshold. From the room in the hospital where he and his wife were under treatment for severe shock, Hammond sent his old friend a letter begging him to reconsider. He wrote, "I know now the ancient Egyptians had knowledge and power of which today we have no comprehension. In the name of God, I beg you to take care." Carnarvon ignored the letter, and soon afterwards he was dead from an infected mosquito bite. One by one, the members of the expedition followed him to the grave in what became known as the Curse of the Pharaohs.
Okay, well, we're back. That was very interesting about that hand. I love actually anything to do with Egyptian Egyptology and Egyptian folklore, etc. I mean, they've certainly kept meticulous records of anything that's happened going back 5,000 years in their country.
I just find
I love anything to do with that. But we have a story coming up now from Colm, and Colm is Colm in Dublin or London at the moment?
not the moment. Yeah, column space.
So Colin's in London at the moment, so he's going to give us a ghost story about Bishop Marsh. And Bishop Marsh was a bishop in Dublin who opened the first library in Dublin. But it's not for us to talk about. Colin's going to tell you the story, so we're going to go over to Colin now, and please enjoy.
The ghost of Archbishop Narcissus Marsh in Marsh's Library in Dublin. Source: Irish Ghost Stories by Patrick Byrne, 1965. Marsh's Library was the first public library in Ireland, having opened in Dublin in 1707. It had previously been the private library of the colourfully named clergyman Archbishop Narcissus Marsh, who lived there from 1638 to 1713. It turns out the man of God wasn't quite ready to meet his maker, because reports of him haunting the library, and in particular the inner gallery, go back at least 130 years. To quote Patrick Byrne's book, he was reported to frequent the inner gallery, which contained his favourite books. It is said he moved in and out amongst the cases, taking down some of the volumes from the shelves and occasionally throwing them down on the reader's desk, as if in anger. In the morning, things were always found to be in order. The story behind the haunting turns out to be rather haunting itself. The Archbishop, it turns out, raised one of his nieces from childhood, and as you might expect, she was like a daughter to him. When she eloped with a seaman, it must have ruined him. The story goes, the niece fell in love and eloped with a foreign sea captain whose boat was moored at the end of Wine Tavern Street. Before doing so, however, she wrote a note to her uncle asking for his forgiveness, and placed it in one of his favourite books. The Archbishop never found it in his lifetime, and so his ghost is said to still be seeking it.
And now we're back. That was
very interesting.
Yeah. It was
that's
short. It was short. We'll definitely, when the virus is finished, we'll go to Marsh's library and we can have a look around for ourselves. It's one of the oldest. It is the oldest library in Ireland, I believe. So
that's definitely one for the list. Then that we're definitely doing. It sounds very interesting and very spooky.
So the last story now we have is a ghost story, again read by our friend Colm. And this is about Lady Beresford, who was married to Lord Tyrone.
The Tale of Lord Tyrone and Lady Beresford. Taken from Irish Ghost Stories by Patrick Byrne, 1965. Back in the days before Irish independence, the country was divided amongst members of the British ascendancy, lords and ladies, men who had inherited their titles or been awarded them for acts of perceived valour in war. One such lord was Lord Tyrone, meaning, as you may expect, he was Lord of County Tyrone in the north of Ireland. He was actually born John Lapoor, or Power. Along with Nicola Sophia Hamilton, he was raised by a guardian, being as they both were orphans. The guardian, whose name has been lost to history, would try, we are told, to convert them away from their religious beliefs to his own atheist ones. Well, it seems he may have actually had an influence on them, because they both made a pact to report back about the afterlife in the event that one of them should die before the other. Nicola went on to marry Lord Beresford, making her Lady Beresford, the name she would be known for through the ages. The story goes, one night she woke in terror to find her foster brother standing beside the bed. He bade her be quiet and told her he had just died. The ghost of her beloved brother then went on to detail a few things that one thinks hardly left her in a state of calm. He shared with her news of the future, of the death of her husband, who one imagines was lying beside her during all this, and also he shared the fact that she would marry again and have 4 more children. The ghost, not content with breaking the lady's heart, decided to disturb her even more, adding, according to the book, soon after the death of her last one, on the day of her 47th birthday, her own death would take place. The lady, not one to be easily fooled or tricked, asked the spirit how she would know this was not simply a dream. At this, Lord Tyrone took her wrist in his icy clasp, and immediately it shrank and withered. For the remainder of her life, she always wore a black silk ribbon over her deformity. Such details really do make you wonder how good the relationship was to begin with. Unfortunately, there are no details explaining how or why the good Lord died, or under what circumstances. In any case, the events told to her that night came to pass. She had 4 children, and indeed her husband died and she remarried. It's hard to see her enjoying her 47th birthday or being ecstatic upon hearing news of her 4th pregnancy, for that matter, but thankfully it wasn't her last, and she saw the sun set on her 47th year and saw it rise on her 48th. So she decided to celebrate, as one might expect when one manages to evade their supposedly predestined death. One of the guests that night was an old clergyman, a man of the cloth who was an old family friend. She said, "I'm 48 today." To her dismay, the clergyman said, "No, you were mistaken. You were only 47. She goes on, "Then you have signed my death warrant." Which honestly seems a bit unkind to a man whose only crime was paying attention to details and having a good memory. The story goes that she went to her room, probably not feeling too good, and died later that night, leaving her children and the party downstairs to carry on without her.
Wow, another spooky tale. That is definitely something that we need to sort of investigate a wee bit further ourselves. It's all food for thought. You know, there's something to these. I believe there's something to them. We don't have an awful lot left now for this particular episode of Haunted Hearsay. I think we've bored you all enough. I hope not. I hope you have enjoyed what you have been watching. We do have one more short film coming up, which was won an awful lot of awards, including it was shown at the Pompeii Film Festival. Wasn't it the Pompeii Film Festival in Italy?
It was a thing called the Italian Movie Award at the Pompeii UNESCO.
Yeah. Yeah, and but the actors now involved in that were Saoirse Bannon, Danny McColgan, and yourself, Aoife Kelly, Anthony Thonius Robinson, and Colin Dwyer. You all worked on the production and direction for the short film. Just to give it's called Luna. It's about the fairies, and just to give people a little bit of a quick background, it's to do with a man stepping into a day in fairy world. Now, the difference is in our time, a day is 24 hours. A day in fairy world is a lot longer. So we're going to go over to the film. It's not that long, 7 minutes, and we'll get back to you in a minute. Please enjoy Luna. I hope everyone enjoyed that as much as I did. I think it's a fabulous, well done, Ben, well done, Aoife, well done, Anthony, Colin. It was a fantastic effort and so inventive, to sort of tell the story through dance and music, and a different interpretation of doing things. And I absolutely loved it, and I'm sure anyone watching's loved it as well. Please, anyone watching, if you have enjoyed anything that we've talked about today, give us a like and a subscribe.
That's
And tune in again. We'll be coming out in future on a Tuesday and a Thursday. So we'll have now today we're going to play this episode on a loop. So anyone misses it the first time, you'll get it the next time. But we have more coming out Tuesday and then Thursday. So we'll have ghost stories from different people. Today was more about introducing what we're actually going to be doing. Most of it is genuinely haunted hearsay. It's going to be ghost stories, anything, as I say, we've said before, to do with the paranormal, any gossip we have heard about anything spooky, we're going to talk about it. But today was to give you an all round of what we're doing. So I really hope that you've enjoyed everything today. Really please like and subscribe. Please join us again on Tuesday. We have a fantastic interview coming up next week. I'll save the information as to who until we know for definite when we're doing it. But that's a special episode, so I would love everyone to tune into that. And we look forward to you joining us again. If anyone has a ghost story that they want to share with us, please put it in the comments. We're open to everything, and we just, if you don't believe and you think it's nonsense, that's fine, you're entitled to your opinion. But I think everyone, once you say it, does have something or heard of something. So please join in with us and tell us your ghost story, and we'll discuss it the next episode. So from myself and Ben, and from Colin O'Dwyer, we'd like to wish you all a very happy Samhain. Ben?
Happy Sound, happy Halloween. Have a great night, stay safe, and we'll see you next Tuesday.
That's it. All right, goodbye from me.
Bye, guys.
Bye.